The Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio. It's a pleasure to have you again for our first-time listeners. And viewers. My name is Jenetta Barry, and our show today is Talking Heads. And I'm an expert presenter on today's topic, which is about linking finances to our life purpose, that lack of direction and fine-tuning, because some of us do know what we want to do, but as with last week when I talked about self-wealth with our finances, today we're going to talk about that worth and that wealth within ourselves and our life purpose. And, to start off with a really great quote that I just love is, "My life changed the day I moved beyond just wishing for things and I started earning them. That is the day I learned that we don't get what we wish for, we get what we plan for and work for." And that was written by Steve Maraboli. And I think that's the big thing is it starts from an internal self-worth and self-wealth, which I mentioned in last week's episode. And it really came home to me because so often we hear these days how if you follow your dreams, people say, follow your dreams, do what you truly love most, then synchronicities will open up and it will all naturally flow. That opportunities will present themselves in most special ways, and then the income and finances will flow with it. Well, hands up how many of us have tried that, and it hasn't always worked out that way. Because over these years, I've met many people who are following their heart's desire in my line of work, but who are battling financially. And by the way, as we mentioned, or I mentioned last week, even within being successful financially, you've got to have ebbs and flows, because those are the cycles of currency, of currency, which is money. So some are battling due to what we addressed in last week, a lack of self-worth and not being able to feel worthy of charging appropriately and earning. It's a big one where we go, well, Joe Bloggs is better qualified than I am. And others can be secretly scared that success is too dangerous. I know for me, it was a very real problem when I first started out in my line of work. And today I'm going to touch on addressing, give you a first exercise. If you'd like to do more with me, you're very welcome. But this first exercise can give you some great insight, and I'll give it to you at the end of this presentation. So we're going to be addressing becoming more focused and clear about how to manifest your life purpose through your finances, rather than approaching a vision from a place of fantasy, because as again we talked about in session 1 a few weeks ago, if you're in a place of fantasy and you haven't factored in what won't work, and you've not understood what won't work and where your fantasy is, and what will work and what won't work, I know it sounds a bit confusing, but it's being able to see the value in what's not working and the disservice in what you think will work, as much as you are attached to seeing the service of what will work. And when you've got that balance, it makes a whole different ball game on what you're doing. And it's really why 14 years later, I'm still in the Epiphany process, because I've understood what that's about. It's not always been easy. it's a balancing act. It's a balancing skill. And sometimes one gets it right and sometimes one doesn't. And that's part of the deal as well. So when we've not processed our hidden fantasies about our life purpose, then when the balancing nightmare scenario of what we inadvertently judge about ourselves automatically kicks in, we feel deflated and overwhelmed and turn our self-worth and our self-wealth and it can take a direct hit because we turn onto that and create an imbalance. So as discussed before, the secret is to thoroughly explore the ins and outs of what you're truly inspired to create in this life. That's the first thing. And then to understand how being challenged and succeeding are not separate on the path to creating what we're truly inspired to create in our lifetime. So it is really, I've just had my son on a previous program on global adventures with Dr. Jacqueline, and he did just that at the age of 18, where he sat down and went, what is it I really, really want to do? What am I really inspired to do? And he realized it was not to sit behind a desk for the rest of his life. He'd have to do it sometimes, and he works with wild animals and out in the plains of Africa now, and with guests and tourists. And that's because he became very clear and certain. But when he started doing it, he was also very clear and certain of what wouldn't work in that lifestyle and where the nightmares of it are, where the challenges are. So he wasn't going in with this, oh my gosh, I'm going to have the sun setting in the background, you know, orange sun, African skyline, the thorn tree, so romantic, so lovely. There's always a downside on whatever it is that you're inspired to do. And when you've got an equal list of what you see it will give you as much as what won't work, and then you go over to that other side of what won't work. If that doesn't work, what does it give me? Now, an example would be, I've had in all my 64 years of living on this planet, I've had a really varied lifetime of jobs, that some of which I really didn't want to do. And because I was married or getting divorced or whatever it was, I was forced into those jobs, and they were nightmarish to me. And at the time, it was like, why do I have to take another day of this and that boss and these people and this type of work? I really don't enjoy it. Until the day I realized what skills and techniques and experience and exposure those jobs were giving me. And that every single skill I've learned in the downside of any job that I've had, even the jobs I've enjoyed, are all being used in what I do today. And that if I hadn't had those experiences, I would not be as skilled as I am today. They were wonderful training grounds. So if you can get what it is you do want to do, where your life purpose is, and you get very clear and certain and specific, and then start doing those two lists, the list of what you know you do want to have happen in your in that life purpose job, and the list of what wouldn't work and what that will give you, that if it always was plain sailing, wouldn't. So that was the very first thing that I did in becoming very clear, certain, and specific about my life purpose. And by the way, when you get clear, certain, and specific, those are three key elements. That happens when you take overthinking and overfeeling, over emotions, over feeling overly about something, overly charged, or feeling overly logical about something. When you take those distracting thoughts and emotions and you're able to peel them away and take away the fear, the judgment stories, when you can take that away, then what happens is you start becoming very clear and certain and specific and accurate about what it is you do want. And there's a very real balance of going, I do, I don't, I do, I don't, and there's a little bit more towards do, and it's like you see things from a big picture. And that's what I love about the Epiphany process, is that the sets of questions that you can ask yourself to get even more clear and certain and specific are gobsmacking, really. It's really quite insightful. But why I mention those three key words is when you listen to people talking about the art of manifesting, the manifestation, those are the three key ingredients that manifest whatever you want in your life. When you're clear, certain, and specific, those are the three key ingredients to manifestation. Now I'm sounding quite spiritual because there are a lot of courses out there that talk about manifesting and using meditation and vision boards, and they're all helpful. But I'm looking at it from a scientific side. And when you can start asking yourself scientific questions, that it becomes even more accurate. And so one of the things that happened to me 22, 23 years ago now was I got very ill one day. My children were small. We were living in Kenya. My youngest was only 4 or 5 years old, and my eldest 16. And I got extremely ill. I got cancer. I had to be flown out of Kenya and down to South Africa, because in those days, not anymore, but in those days, the medical facilities were a lot superior in South Africa. And I arrived down there, and they opened me up, and they operated on me, and they found that I had cancer in the uterus, and that it had started moving towards the glands attached to my aorta in my abdomen. So instead of a routine hysterectomy and being back with my family 2-3 weeks later, I was kept down in South Africa and had to have cancer treatment for many weeks and months. And I only got home 3 months after I had the operation, back to these small children. And by the way, this is another thing, when you only see the downside to that. Well, I can tell you that the outpouring of love that came from the community here in Kenya, and the experiences my children had whilst I was away, they were taken on helicopter rides by some really knowledgeable people of the bush. And so many things happened to them that they still remember to this day. So there are upsides to even the downside. But what that taught me when I got back looking like a stick insect, because I went down to 45 kilos, back to manage a house with children and a husband who was working and feeling very weak, was that it was really important that I put my worth into what I was if I needed to move forward, because there was no doubt we couldn't be a single income family, not with 4 children, and that I needed to get back to work as soon as possible. But I still was quite weak. And I remember my husband at the time saying to me, you have to get back to work. Let's get you well. Let's feed you up. We've got to have that income. We cannot not have that income. And I remember sitting there going, there's an imbalance here, because we do need that income. But what if I had died? Then what? Then what would have happened? What if I hadn't survived? And then I sat down with him and said, okay, let's do the list of the things that I am required as a mother and wife to do. And we listed them. And then I said, if I wasn't around, how much would it cost for somebody else to do that job for you and the children? And we started putting amounts of money, and it was absolutely mind-opening to realize that my self-wealth was being undervalued. And I've never forgotten that. And that's really what I would suggest you start doing. Once you've got clear about what it is that you do want to do in your life, don't discount what you're already doing. Start making a list of all the things that you already do that have worth, even though you don't draw a salary. And at the end of that whole list, we added that up. And, you know, if I was being paid a salary, I'd have been doing very well. And that is worthwhile. That's part of your self-worth being attached to your self-wealth. And when you can already take cognizance of how valuable and wealthy and wealth-filled your job that you do, or jobs that you do around the house, around the children, around your parents, around your siblings, around your friends, what that's worth in monetary, we tend to shy away from it because why put money to something that we do from our heart? Because if we go back to last week, money is a current. It's been given a bad name, but it's part of creation. It's part of God's creation. And when you bring it in with open-hearted appreciation and attach it to your worth and make it your self-wealth, you'll never look back. Because now, whatever I do, I understand how much value it has on an action level, on an emotional level, on a thinking level, but especially on a monetary level. And that can make a big, big difference. So go back and have a look at all the things over the years. Don't do just the lists of what you're doing now. Go back to the time that you became able to respond. And that's a new bent on responsible. People think, oh, I must be responsible. But if you bring responsible into its pure term, able to respond, then you realize that you've been responsible. You've been able to respond to people, circumstances, and life itself for a long, long time. If you start making a list of all the times you've done a job of work from the heart, baked a cake for somebody, changed a nappy for your child, even given birth to your child, if you were to give that monetary worth, I mean, after all, some people pay surrogate parents to have their children these days. There's worth in that. You start seeing how valuable your worth is and how wealthy your self-wealth is. Go back right till the earliest memory where you provided a service to either yourself or others, and start listing it and putting monetary value. That makes a big difference to start realizing that whatever you do is worth charging because you're worth it. And the people who are getting your service are getting something from it, provided, of course, you're giving it from a place of balance. That's the big thing. And so, just to end off, this is a fairly clear, it's a shorter session today, but it's a fairly clear one. Get very clear, certain, and specific about what you truly do want to do. If you're finding there's a yes but in it, have a look at that and say, what is it that I'm scared of? Bring it out. I always call that the and then what? In fact, Andy, my partner, often teases me when I've got a client on the line and they're expressing their deepest fear. So as you're getting clear and certain and specific, about what it is you want to do. And then you go, yes, but, and you allow the worst case scenario that's hidden inside you, because you're sitting with the worst case scenario. If I go and do the job that I really want to do, then there won't be this. And then I go, and then what will happen? And then this won't happen. And then what will happen? Oh, and then this won't happen. And there's no solutions in that exercise, because it's very easy to say, yeah, but my parents will come in and they'll advise and they'll help, or a best friend, or they more than likely will. But what happens is there's a hidden story in deep inside you that's saying, can't do this, it's too scary. And it's the then what will happen story, when you let out what will happen and feel safe to let it out, either write it or speak it to somebody. Suddenly, my clients get to the end of it, and often it's, I'm going to be destitute on the streets, or I'll die from hunger. And they sit there and go, but that would never happen. But that's the story. That's the type of story we're keeping inside of ourselves. So the then what will happen story is a wonderful way to let it out, because that story wants to be heard, validated, and balanced out. And when it's heard and validated, it's not so scary anymore. That helps you to become more clear, certain, and specific. And then after that, your next step, which will help you to feel so much more empowered to do what you truly like and love, is to already take cognizance of the worth and wealth inside you that you already have. When you've got that in place, it gives you the impetus and the energy to move forward and never look back. Here I am 14, 15 years later, still doing the work I do, loving what I'm doing. And it's morphed into something even more precious and deeper with World Jenny's Day. It's these things that have come because I followed those steps that I've just given you. So I want to thank you for your attention and your interest, and to say, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV. And you can find all of our Talking Head episodes under the playlist titled Talking Heads 2022. There is a mine of information in these Talking Head shows, and a diverse sets of subjects and conversations. So I really do highly recommend you get over there, subscribe, and watch our other Talking Heads shows as well. And of course, please do reach out to me if I may be of service. If you'd like some more clarity, certainty, and specificity in stepping through, in linking your finances to your self-wealth, please do reach out to me. You can contact me at theepiphanyprocess.com, or Jenetta, Jenetta, at theepiphanyprocess.com. And I would be delighted to chat with you, because you will never look back when you step into this zone. And we've come to the last of our first 6 subjects. It's been an honor and a pleasure to share all this with you. And I look forward to seeing you back on this amazing channel very soon. Lots of love. Bye.